Hey, I want to talk about what just happened. I believe it was yesterday. This was written by Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz for Israel365news.com, where the Jews in Israel did the reenactment of the water libation ceremony, and it was titled Reenactment of the Water Libation Held to Prepare for the Third Temple. They quote Isaiah 12:3. Joyfully shall you draw water from the fountains of triumph. There's some very interesting statements within this letter, in this news article, that you're going to find very interesting, the timing of it. And it says on Tuesday, a full dress reenactment of the water libation as it was performed in the temple was held in Jerusalem with several hundred participants led by Kohanim in priestly garb, accompanied by Levites playing musical instruments. The event began at Sha'ar Hashbad, the Dung Gate in Jerusalem's Old City, where participants joined Kohanim priests in biblically mandated vestments and Levites with musical instruments, also wearing special vestments. The musically gifted Levites led the ceremony with joyous music on drums, violin, guitar, and clarinet, winding down ancient walkways into the valley below the Temple Mount. The crowd sang and danced as they passed from the archaeological remains of the ancient city of David through an Arab village to the Shiloh or Siloam spring or pool, which was used in temple times. That's exactly where Jesus told the man to go wash his eyes after he put the clay on his eyes, and he had been born blind, but now he could see when he washed in the pool. The procession was punctuated by stops during which 4-foot-long pure silver trumpets were sounded. The event was overseen by Rabbi Yisrael Ariel, the founder of the Temple Institute, Rabbi Dov Lior, Rabbi Aryeh Stern, the chief rabbi of Jerusalem, Rabbi Shmuel Eliyahu, Rabbi David Chai HaKohen, Rabbi Raham HaKohen, Rabbi Menachem Bornstein, Rabbi Yuri Cherky, and other distinguished rabbis. At the head of the parade was the gold vessel, the water jug. At the Shiloh pool, the jug was filled. The procession climbed back up to the top of the mountain. A model altar and its utensils had been set up in an open area adjacent to the western wall. The altar was decorated with large leafy willow branches, as was done in the temple. And last year I found a willow branch here, and I brought it in and hung it up on the headboard where it dried, and it's still hanging in there now. The ceremony culminated in the priestly blessing, after which the once in 7 years Hakel ceremony was held. Though not explicitly mandated in the Torah, the water libation is part of the oral tradition passed down from Moses. Sukkot is a joyous holiday, and the water libation was the focal point of this joy in the temple. The ceremony would take 15 hours with accompanying celebrations lasting all night until the temple service began again the next morning. Nations came from around the world to take part in the Sukkot celebrations, making it international worship of God. So that's what they're hoping for in the future. And not only that, but it was during this time that Jesus stood in the temple and said, when they were pouring out the water libation ceremony, "Let all who thirst come to me." In temple times, a libation of water was made together with the pouring out of wine at the morning service on the last 6 days of the week-long Sukkot holiday. Kohanim descended from the temple to the Shiloh spring at the base of Mount Moriah, where they filled the flask with 3 log of spring water, approximately 2 pints, and returned to the temple. 2 Kohanim then ascended the stone altar in the temple's inner courtyard, placing 2 silver cups on the southwestern corner. One Cohen poured the water from the silver flask, while the second Cohen simultaneously poured wine from the second cup, both liquids flowing into holes in the altar specifically prepared for this ceremony. The Shiloach pool, Siloam in English, and I think Siloam's actually the Greek, Salwan in Arabic, has a huge biblical import that will re-emerge when the third temple is built. The pool of Siloam, or Shiloach, was the starting point for pilgrims who made the annual pilgrimage to Jerusalem for the biblical feasts. And of course, I was just watching that video that they have unearthed the original pilgrimage road that went from this pool to the temple. And in the destruction of Jerusalem, all of this debris and stones fell upon it where it was buried for 2,000 years. And since about 2014, they have been digging out this covered over sidewalk pavement of steps that went up to the temple. And now they have a good portion of it that's exposed that you can see. And they come to an end of it where they've, got to the point where they stopped excavating, and you can see all of the stones and debris in that area where they're stopped by not being able to go farther till they excavate. And they have no earthly idea what they're going to find when they unearth that part of it, which is very exciting. And one of the things that they found down in this area was a Roman sword, and they know that Jews were hiding there and were killed when the Romans uncovered them. This was in tunnels that were below today's modern streets and, the hill of the city of David. The pool of Siloam, or Shiloach, was the starting point for the pilgrims who made the annual pilgrimage to Jerusalem for the biblical feasts. They would use the pool to wash and ritually purify themselves before ascending by foot to the inner court of the Temple Mount to bring their sacrificial offerings located outside the walls of the old city of Jerusalem to the southeast. The pool is fed by the waters of the Gihon spring, which are carried there by the Shiloach Tunnel, also known as Hezekiah's Tunnel, sometimes referred to in the Bible as the Lower Pool. The pool was built during the reign of Hezekiah, which was 715 to 687 BCE, to replace an older Canaanite tunnel, known biblically as the Upper Pool, that was vulnerable to attackers. The new pool and tunnel left besieging armies without access to the spring's waters. Archaeologists believe that during the Second Temple era, the waters continued to flow south and were collected in an additional larger pool. This pool was discovered during the summer of 2004 and is continuing to be uncovered today. I think they said about 2/3 of it are still underneath a garden of some church that's there that owns the property, and only one little section of the pool has been uncovered. But it's an absolutely huge body of water where people used to come by the droves to, take a mikveh in it, a ritual bath. Now this next part, you've got to perk up your ears and hear this. It should be noted that the year after Shemitah is auspicious for the arrival of the Messiah. And I think it's interesting because they use the word auspicious, which actually means favorable. And that was when Jesus came the first time. That was the favorable year of the Lord, when Jesus said that the scriptures were being fulfilled within their hearing. And that was what was said about the favorable year of the Lord being right then. So is this telling us that this is the favorable year of the Lord for the rapture? The Babylonian Talmud in the tractate of Sanhedrin 97a brings the verse from Amos 9:11. Interesting set of numbers. Amos 9:11. On that day will I raise up the fallen booth, the sukkah of David, or tabernacle it would be. Interesting that when Jesus stood in the temple and proclaimed, "Let all who thirst come to me," was during the Feast of Tabernacles, and this is when God raised up the fallen booth, or the sukkah of David, because Jesus was dwelling in a temporary sukkah of his own body to take away the curse of Eden in the place that had been Eden, to bring us back to the garden to dwell with God forever through the power of his Holy Spirit. This verse comes in the context of a prophecy about God bringing the nation of Israel back from exile among the nations. Amidst descriptions of the days preceding the Messiah, their Talmud says, "As it is written in that day, I will raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen." Our rabbis taught in the 7-year cycle, at the end of which the Son of David will come in the first year, this verse will be fulfilled. On Rosh Hashanah, 2 weeks ago, the Shemitah sabbatical year ended. So the Talmud is stating explicitly that the Messiah will come in the first year after the Shemitah. So that's this year. It should be noted that the Talmud describes the days before the Messiah in depth, and they are especially difficult times. Shall I give you my 2 cents worth about that message? And what I see in that is the fact that this year, being the first year after the Shemitah cycle just ended of 7 years, and we are starting the new 7-year cycle. So think about this. With that idea in mind, the fact that the Shemitah cycle of 7 years just ended and a new one began 2 weeks ago, and they're saying that this is the favorable year of the Messiah to come. Well, because this is the first year after the Shemitah, and this is when their book tells them that the Messiah is going to come. And guess what? Guess what falls in line with that? I'll give you 3 guesses. Well, let me just get to it, and that is that this happens to be the first year that starts the new Shemitah cycle, in which the Messiah would be favorable to come. And doesn't this set it up exactly for the last 7-year reign of an earthly king that's about to be coronated within this first year of the 7-year Shemitah cycle, which would be King Charles III, who will be anointed on May 6th of 2023. The one that's been circumcised by a rabbi, the one who was extremely good friends with Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who's now passed away. And he's got the 2 relatives, Princess Alice and Princess Ella, that are buried on the Mount of Olives. And this is just incredible. So you've got to be kidding me to think about the fact that Queen Elizabeth II reigned for 70 years, and Daniel's prophecy is the 70 times 7, or the 70 weeks prophecy. The Queen ruled for 70 years as defender of the faith, the only defending monarch of the Christianity throughout the world. And now we've got the Messiah due to come, because this is the first year of the new Shemitah cycle, and this is favorable for their Messiah to come the very year that King Charles III takes the throne. You can't tell me that this isn't all being put into place by the hand of God to fulfill the scriptures. And whether we like the way they're going to be fulfilled or not, we don't have any say in it. We can just pray, but it's going to come to pass exactly how the Lord said it would. So literally, you've got on May 6th, 2023, a king that's been circumcised by Jewish rabbis that's going to sit on Jacob's pillow stone under the throne chair and is going to be defender of not just the Church of England but all faiths, a great apostasy. You've got him being anointed to become the anointed one, which is the meaning of Messiah. And it all falls into place with what their Talmud is telling them, that this is the year that's favorable for the arrival of the Messiah. Bingo, they take the last earthly king, reject the true king of kings, the one that's in heaven that's going to descend after the end of this 7-year Shemitah cycle. See how it all falls into place? Wow. So it's pretty powerful, and I just wanted to bring this to you this evening because I thought it was pretty stunning. Now, if you happen to have a copy of my book, I talked all about revelations the Lord gave me in the lulav waving, and this was also written by Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz for Israel 365 News about the Jews wave lulav on Temple Mount, dated October 12th of 2022. And this is from Leviticus 23:40, where it says, "On the first day you shall take the product of hadar trees, branches of palm trees, boughs of leafy trees, and willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before Hashem your God 7 days." On Tuesday, several young men ascended the Temple Mount and produced a set of lulav and etrog to use in the ritual that's performed during the current holiday of Sukkot. The young men, reportedly from the town of Bat Ayin in Gush Etzayan, performed this ritual in full view of the police escort. Tom Nisani, head of the Bayadino Temple Mount activist organization, released a statement. Jews observed the mitzvot commandment of the holiday in the holiest place in the world, and nothing happened, Nisani said. Those who create provocations on the subject are only the police and the government. It's time to stop being afraid and allow Jews also freedom of worship on the Temple Mount. As Nisani implied, religious freedom and equality are mandated by Israeli law, and the police are supposed to protect the rights of Jews to perform religious rituals on the Temple Mount. But the law stipulates that the police may curtail this civil right due to security considerations. The police responded, "This is a particular and distorted description, as the violations that occurred today in the Temple Mount area were dealt with by the police, including the removal and arrest of one of the violators, including the case described. Today the visits took place on the Temple Mount as scheduled and in accordance with the rules. Unfortunately, a few visitors violated the rules and were treated accordingly. We will continue to work to maintain security and order in the area and to hold visits to the Temple Mount in accordance with the rules that have been in place for decades. Any attempt by extremist elements to make provocations of this kind, to encourage or justify them, first and foremost, harms the public visit to the place, the vast majority of which adheres to the rules of visiting the place that have been in place for many years. On Wednesdays, Jews visiting the site were subjected to full body searches. 1,397 Jews ascended the Temple Mount on Tuesday, the first day of Kol HaMoed, intermediary days of Sukkot. Another Jew took the opportunity to perform a halakha, a haircutting ceremony held when a Jewish boy turns 3 years old and receives his first haircut. And one more thing that I want to read from Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz. October 13th, 2022 were photos of the Feast of Tabernacles, returns to Jerusalem manifesting Zechariah's prophecy, which is in Zechariah 14:16. After a 2-year pandemic hiatus, the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem, is once again hosting its annual Feast of Tabernacles gathering in Israel. Over 2,000 Christians from over 70 countries are in attendance for the week-long Sukkot holiday from October 9th through 16th. Another 30 nations are attending online. Some of the main speakers at this year's feast include Israeli President Isaac Herzog, Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem Fleur Hassan Nahum, and American pastor Andrew Brunson, who was imprisoned in Turkey for 2 years on false charges of terrorism. The event was last held in person in 2019 before the pandemic, when nearly 6,000 pilgrims attended. Rabbi Tuli Weiss, head of Israel 365, attended the event in Jerusalem and saw its prophetic potential. It is inspiring to see thousands of Christians from so many nations who have ascended to Jerusalem to celebrate Sukkot, the rabbi said. It felt like a dress rehearsal for Zechariah's prophecy. I look forward to its actual manifestation when there will be even more people and more nations getting with God's program. David Parsons, Vice President and Senior Spokesman for the ICEJ, noted that the enthusiasm of the attendees was palpable. After 2 years of travel bans, people are especially excited to come to Israel, and we are excited to welcome them here, Parsons told Israel 365 News. For the first time in the 43-year history of the feast, we held the opening events in the Galilee. The feast opened for 2 days of worship services in Capernaum National Park in Galilee, a site that appears prominently in the New Testament. Yeah, where Jesus was living. On Tuesday and Wednesday, special events, including the roll call of nations, were held in the Paz area in Jerusalem. Normally, we go to the Dead Sea and En Gedi to give the people a desert experience similar to Sukkot in the Sinai wilderness, Parsons said. But the Galilee is so important to Christians because of the life and ministry of Jesus in that area. Yippee! On Wednesday, the Parade of Nations will pass through Jerusalem. This spectacular event puts on display an international outpouring of love for God's eternal city, Jerusalem. Since its inception in 1980, the Christian celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles has been a vital and central part of the ministry of the ICEJ to comfort the people of Israel. See Isaiah 41. This is also in preparation for the prophetic end-of-day celebration of Sukkot that will bring all nations together in Jerusalem. It says in Zechariah 14:16, all who survive of all those nations that came up against Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, shall make a pilgrimage year by year to bow low to the King, Lord of hosts, and to observe the feast of Sukkot. Mr. Parsons noted that there will be an Egyptian delegation marching in the parade, as well as 2 Iranian exiles. They are converts to Christianity and prayer leaders, he said. They will march with the Iranian flag, which is extraordinary considering what's going on in Iran right now. It bears witness that not everyone in Iran hates Israel and that there is hope for peace. The 8th and final day of the feast will take the Christian pilgrims down to the western Negev for a special solitary rally and tree planting ceremony with the local Israeli communities in the Gaza border area. The ICEJ has been helping to provide bomb shelters and firefighting equipment in the area that has been targeted by rockets from Gaza. The ICEJ was founded in 1980 in response to worldwide diplomatic protest of Israel's official declaration of Jerusalem as its undivided and eternal capital. When embassies in Jerusalem were being closed left and right, a group of Christians living in Israel decided to open their own embassy in Jerusalem. It was a symbolic show of support that quickly turned into tangible support for Israel and Jewish people around the world. And this was the photograph of the water libation ceremony posted by Josh Wander in Israel. So to sum up the story, they are expecting their anointed one to arrive this year. And what are the odds? What are the odds of the Queen dying and King Charles III taking the throne and being coronated in May? I mean, it's just unbelievable. So Passover 2023 begins in the evening of Wednesday, April 5th, and ends the evening of Thursday, April 13th. That means King Charles will become the anointed one approximately 23 days after Passover ends. And I told you that corresponds to Iyar 15 on the Hebrew calendar. So I told you a little bit in my last video about that being the day that the unleavened bread ran out, that the Hebrews made while they were in Egypt. They put it in their kneading bowls and took it into the wilderness, and that was the day that they ran out of the unleavened bread that had come out of Egypt with them. And so they were crying out to God for, sustenance. They wanted meat. They wanted all of the vegetables and leeks and onions and garlic that they had in Egypt. They were crying out for meat. God gave them the manna, and they got sick of the manna, and they were crying about that because they wanted meat, and God gave them the quail. So God approves of eating meat, as I told you before. By the way, they reported in the news, which you probably saw, that will be the coronation day, May 6th, 2023, is also Harry and Meghan's baby Archie's 4th birthday. So I find it interesting that when I looked up about the number 23 in the Bible, of course, it says that Psalm 23, the Psalm of David, is the most well-known, popular, and beloved of all the Psalms. King David, who wrote it, sings of God's protection, guidance, refreshment, abundant blessing, and promise of eternal life to those who love him. And isn't it interesting that will be the day that somebody who claims to have the genealogical line of being descended from David will take that throne on 23 days after Passover, take the throne of David as an earthly king. Wow. You couldn't even orchestrate it to be that. This has to be, that God has everything in place the way that he said it was going to happen. It's going to happen. And we are just watching it fall into place. Something that's also interesting about the number 23 is that in 609 BC, after the death of King Josiah, his 23-year-old son, Jehoahaz, succeeded him as ruler. His reign, however, would become one of the shortest in Judah's history. So is that really a signal and a sign to us that this really is going to be what happens when King Charles III is coronated, and he'll be the anointed one at the anointing ceremony with the holy royal oil as he sits upon Jacob and his pillow stone. Israel is Jacob. I mean, you can't even imagine how this is all being orchestrated. And I really truly believe this is what's going to be coming down the pike pretty soon. So obviously he's going to have one of the shortest reigns in history too, because if it's only going to be a 7-year Shemitah cycle till Jesus comes at the end of it to rule and reign forever, then he's got one of the shortest reigns coming of any of the monarchs, while the Queen had all the way through her platinum jubilee, this 70 years. All of these things are just so in place, and I don't know, I'm sure it's flooring you like it's flooring me. I'm sure you see how stunning this is. It's really unbelievable. I thought I'd look up to see if there's any celestial signs in the heavens then. And May 5th, there's a penumbral lunar eclipse. It will occur when the moon passes through the Earth's partial shadow, or penumbra. During this type of eclipse, the moon will darken slightly but not completely. The eclipse will be visible throughout all of Asia and Australia and parts of Eastern Europe and Eastern Africa. I'm reading this from seasky.org. And the next night, May 6th and 7th, we have the Eta Aquarids meteor shower. The Eta Aquarids is an above average shower capable of producing up to 60 meteors per hour in its peak. Most of the activity is seen in the southern hemisphere. In the northern hemisphere, the rate can reach about 30 meteors per hour. It is produced by dust particles left behind by Comet Halley, which has been observed since ancient times. The shower runs annually from April 19th to May 28th. It peaks this year on the night of May 6th, the very day that King Charles III is coronated. That's its peak. And the morning of May 7th, the nearly full moon will be a problem this year, blocking out all but the brightest meteors. If you are patient, you should still be able to catch a few good ones. Best viewing will be from a dark location after midnight. Meteors will radiate from the constellation Aquarius, but can appear anywhere in the sky. So the night before King Charles III becomes the anointed one, the anointed king, we have this penumbral lunar eclipse. And the next night at its peak is this Eta Aquarids meteor shower. Unbelievable signs in the heavens that something biblical's going on. Well, you know that it says that there's going to be miracles, signs, and wonders that are going to happen with this last beast. And remember, a beast is a king. A beast is a king. That's what Daniel the prophet said. So this king is the beast, and his royal cipher is his royal mark, which has 0, which is what he tries to obtain through the 666 of carbon. It's all coming together. It's all coming together. Can you believe this? So just think, since they are going to accept a monarchy, now see, it says about the beast that he has all the power of the former monarchy. Now that former monarchy is the one that had the deadly head wound by a sword and yet lived. That's the monarchy of Judah and Israel. And God brought a sword against them, so their monarchy ended. But of course, Jesus is the eternal King of Judah. And this situation in Israel, when they came back to the land, now they want to restore the monarchy, but they're going to do it through an earthly king and set him upon the throne. And then Jesus is going to come at the end of the 7-year time of Jacob's trouble, and all the kingdoms of this world are going to become King Jesus' kingdom and what he's going to rule. So Israel's going to set up the monarchy at the time that they prepare to build the third temple. And perhaps he's the one that's going to allow it to be built. So you can see how King Charles III, having a genealogical line that supposedly goes back to Solomon and David, it would mean that he becomes the anointed one on the throne of David in the mind of the Jewish people, and he would automatically fall into place as the anointed one, the anointed king. And since he's sitting on Jacob's pillowstone for the time of Jacob's trouble, I mean, it's just unbelievable. And what I was getting ready to say is, it says about, you know, the second beast, which I believe is King Charles III, but the first beast is Jerusalem, the great city, the mother of harlots, the mother of Mystery Babylon, the mother of harlots, as God called them in Lamentations. So this king that they're going to set on the throne for the last 7 year, which will be the time of Jacob's trouble, he will receive the power of the former monarchies of Israel and Judah if he becomes the new monarch during the last days as the king that they say is the anointed one, their Messiah. So he'll be the last ruling king of the earth until Jesus comes. And in the meanwhile, those of us who have accepted our king, and we're waiting and watching for him because he's taken us as a bride unto himself, we're going to go be with him in the glory cloud, where we'll be changed and transformed, and the dead will be raised that believed in him, and we'll go, you know, they'll be in the glory cloud first, and then we'll follow them. But then God's going to deal with this situation of the last 7 years that the prophet Daniel, who happened to be a prince of Judah, with the other princes that were taken captive by King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. And so you can see how the whole monarchy situation plays the role of the beasts in Revelation. The first beast being the ancient monarchy of Israel, whose deadly wound is now healed. And of course, they are going to put a king on that throne once again. So this new king, who has a descendancy of Solomon and David, is going to have the power and authority of those kings, which it basically says there in Revelation, that he will have the power of the first beast. And that's what it's talking about. It's talking about the monarchy, the old monarchy being restored. And there you go. There you go. Man, we are at the cusp of something profound. Don't you see that? And wow. I mean, how long can it be till the Lord comes to take us in the glory cloud, because we love our king and we want to go be with him? But see, Israel hasn't accepted him as king, so they're going to take this earthly king because they don't think that the Messiah is divine or performs miracles or is God in the flesh or anything. They just think he's a political man and that he's going to do these wonderful things for the earth, which King Charles III is saying he's going to bring all this peace and all of this, you know, he's going to bring everything wonderful by taking out the carbons and all of that. It's going to be wonderful for the planet and all of this stuff. So you see how all of that lines up. And of course, I showed you how the WEF is bringing in the one world government, and they're already, I saw an article, they're already bringing in the Catholic Church leaders to make people comply with these new rules and regulations. And that's how they're going to infiltrate Islam, the church, and Judaism through what the Pope has set up in the UAE. So, boy, man, you just cannot believe how close we are. We've got to be close to Jesus coming for us, you know? So I don't want to make this too long, but I just wanted to tell you these things, and I just wanted to give my 2 cents worth of what I see. And I just hope you find this valuable stuff that I'm telling you, because we just are seeing the Bible come alive. So anyway, until next time, enjoy the video, and I pray you're blessed and hope you're having a beautiful, wonderful Feast of Tabernacles, and that it's gone well so far. So good night. Have a nice evening.